Let's make a beautiful quilt together. Or maybe let's make a few quilts together. My name is Fallon and I love to quilt. And today I'm going to show you how this one quilt template can be used to make many different quilt pattern layouts. And the best part is this pattern is jelly roll friendly and you can use it with your scraps. All right, so let me show you how to use this template. It is so easy because we're going to be strip piecing everything. For this quilt pattern, you will need a jelly roll and some background fabric. Now, if you don't want to use a jelly roll, you could always purchase some yardage and just cut 2.5-inch strips from it. If you don't like working with the fabric strips, you can always cut your strips in half to work with some smaller segments. All right, so I'm gonna press my yardage, cut it into 2.5-inch strips. I will need 42 of them, and then we'll get started. After cutting your fabric, you're gonna wanna lay your fabric out so that you have your strips with a background fabric, 2 of your prints, and then a background fabric. So you'll see that laid out here. So you're gonna have half of your background strips divided between your top and bottom row, and then your prints. So just lay out your prints so that there is some contrast and interest between the two. Now there'll be 2 different strip sets that you sew, and you'll want half of those strip sets to be sewn with the A strip set and the other half with the B strip set. I'm going to show you first how to lay out the A strip set. Now the A strip set, when you sew it together, you'll want your first strip to be lined up with the second strip in the row, and the third strip will be staggered about 1.5 to 2 inches, and then the same with the fourth strip set. Now this is because we're going to be cutting out our blocks with a template, and for the A block you're going to want the arrow with the A pointing up, and when you line up your seam, you see it's going to lay at a diagonal. Laying out the strip sets like this and sewing them together will help you get the most out of your fabric, so you'll get the least amount of waste if you stagger your strip sets like this. All right, and so the B strip set is going to stagger in the opposite direction when the B is facing upright, and when you line up your seams, you'll be able to avoid cutting and wasting the least amount of fabric if you stagger your strip set B in this way. Now, if you don't want to stagger your strip set, that is okay. You can still do this pattern, just sew everything together straight if you want to be able to figure out which direction you want to cut your template blocks. When you get there, that's absolutely fine. Just doing it this way will help you waste the least amount of fabric. So I'm going to sew these strip sets together and press them, and then I'll show you how to cut out the template A and the template B. All right, let's start with cutting strip A. So we're going to take the template and lay it down where the seams are lining up with our etched lines. And then you can move it over as close as you can to the edge so you don't lose too much fabric. Now remember, when you're cutting strip set A, you're going to have the A facing up. Now, so I can cut straight off the edge, I'm going to use another ruler to line up for when I first start cutting this straight edge across here so that I keep it really, really straight. So I'm going to hold these 2 rulers down and cut straight across. Move that. Move my fabric to the side a little. And then I'm going to cut as many sides as I can without rotating my fabric. Set that aside for some nice half square triangles. Cut. And then I'll twist. The grips on here should hold pretty well, but if you need to readjust, readjust. And then cut. All right, and so this is one of our A blocks. Isn't that so cute? Now, since we're going to be making A and B blocks, if you need to remember which one is which, you can always use a marker and mark it as A. Set it to the side. All right, and then you're going to keep cutting all the way across this strip set and cut out from the A facing up. So you should be able to get about 10 of these blocks from each strip set. So I'm going to line up my other ruler just to get going. All right, move it to the side. And then now after you get the first one cut, you'll just have 2 cuts to make. It's a lot easier, just the top and the bottom. All right, and so there is another A. So honestly, after getting the strip set sewn, it is just smooth sailing from there. It's really easy to bring these together. All right, so now grab your B strip set and lay it out. All right, so this time you're going to have the B facing up. And it's a little hard to cut at this angle, so I like to just tilt it after I make sure I have it lined up right. Make sure all of my edge lines are lined up with seams, at least as close as you can get it. This time I'm going to line a ruler up at the top here. And then I'm going to cut across one side. All right, and then we have our B set. All right, so just get all of those cut out. All right, and then with your A and B, you're going to have some layout options. So you could make a chevron design. So this is alternating A, B, A, B, A. And now what I plan to do is do kind of arrows where we're going to have some facing up and some facing down. Now, once I get all my other strip sets sewn, I'll be able to make this a lot more scrappy. You won't see some of the prints setting right next to each other, but I wanted to give you a little look at how it will come together. All right, so I showed you how to cut your strip sets to get the most out of your fabric. Now, if you want your strips to match up really nicely, if you are using a jelly roll, I'm going to show you how to cut them so that you can get all of your colors to match up nicely, like I'm going to show in my quilt. All right, so this was my strip set A that I was cutting. And I'm going to cut just one more from it to show you how we're cutting the A with the A arrow facing up and lining up our seams. All right, so now I have 4 A blocks from this strip set. So now we're going to cut 4 of the B blocks from this strip set. So instead of getting 10 like I would normally get, I'm only going to get 8 from it, but I'll get 4 of the A and 4 of the B so they'll match up nicely. All right, but there is my A and B together, and see how that matches up so nicely with these same colors coming together. And the reason I wanted to show you this way, if you're okay with, you know, having a little bit of fabric waste, this is how the pattern will come together with the arrows facing in different directions, and having the same prints together will really help that design stand out. Now, is there something we can do with this piece of fabric? Yes, there's always something we can do with the fabric. So I'm lining it up on a line, the point on a line here, and then the background fabric along a line, and I'm going to cut it in half. All right, and then if we bring it together, get our points to meet, We can sew a 1/4 inch seam. Now it'll work best if you press your fabrics in opposite directions where you sew it. And then so here it is sewn. I have it pressed. And then you see here I had these seams going in opposite directions so I wouldn't have as much bulk. And I'm going to use a 5-inch trim lock and just kind of trim it down and get it squared up nicely. So I just have the line along the seam there. And then, so there we go. We have a fun little half square triangle with the strips in it. And maybe I could use these on the back of the quilt or on the border or something like that. Let's see, as I get strips done, I could keep making these and have a fun pillow, border, secondary small quilt, whatever. So even if you choose to do the second method where you have a little more scrap waste, you could always find a way to use those scraps and make something beautiful with them. I'm going to get some more of these strip sets sewn together and blocks cut out, and then I'll show you how my quilt will come together. After cutting out my block A and block B, I like to sew them together. It just makes it much easier for me to lay out the quilt pattern that I want to do. When I'm sewing together block A and block B, I am very careful to flip my seams if I need to so that they're moving in opposite directions and nest well together. This helps reduce the bulk in the quilt. Once I get all my block A and block B's sewn together, I like to lay them out somewhere so I can see them all. That way, when I put them up on my design wall and lay them out, I can see what colors I still have and see what is needed up on the design board to fill in. Once I have settled on a layout, I start sewing the rows together. To do that, I stacked up each row in order on design boards, and I made sure to label the design board with which row it is. That helped me keep everything straight since I really liked my layout. I always take a photo of the layout. I like to, just so I can refer back to it if I need to it. I mean, sometimes you might drop a stack of your blocks that are all stacked up nicely, right? If that happens, you have a photo. You can then redo that row. After I sewed the rows together, I pressed the seams there as well. I like to make sure that all those seams are going in opposite directions. So I lay out row 1 in front of me, get the seams pressed, then I lay row 2 out underneath it so I can make sure I'm pressing the seams in opposite directions. After getting the quilt top all sewn together, it is time to baste it, quilt it, and bind it. I went ahead and quilted my quilt on the long arm. I just did some simple quilting on it. I am still learning my long arm, so I keep it really simple. But it's fun to have another option than the straight line quilting that I'll do on my domestic sewing machine. So again, this quilt here was brought together using a jelly roll and some background fabric. The quilt behind me is using another layout. It's more of a chevron design. And with that quilt, I used yardage. So you could definitely go in either direction on this pattern and still get a really fun look to your quilt. So with this layout, I kind of did arrows pointing up and down and alternated them that way. The layout behind me with that chevron look is another option you could do, but there are so many different options you could do with your layout with this quilt. I'm going to show you a few of them. I had a lot of fun when I sewed these blocks together behind me. I laid them out in all different types of ways, and I will put those in the pattern that's going to be available when purchasing this template. If you are interested in purchasing this template, there will be a link to purchase it in our online shop down in the description of this video. I really hope that you had fun watching this quilt come together and seeing how versatile this pattern is. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!